Hey, it's Cole here, and today we're going to be breaking down the top interior defensive linemen in this year's draft. The top 5 on my rankings, so let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's start off talking about Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. Let me read off his stats first. 18 solo tackles and 7 sacks, which is pretty good. So let's go ahead and talk about why I like him. First of all, he's very athletic. Defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman. Obviously, it goes down to also his size and length being a weakness. He is smaller. We'll get to that in a minute. But he's very athletic. He can get by interior offensive linemen who obviously are athletic, but sometimes they're not that athletic. You're not, the tackles have to be the most athletic. You can kind of not be as athletic as an interior lineman, so that definitely gives him a one up on the centers and interior and guards. Pass rush, I think he's very good with his pass rush moves and getting to the quarterback. 7 sacks last year. Obviously, that goes into him just being an athletic person that can go ahead and get by some interior offensive line. Let's talk about the weaknesses because obviously that's the big thing about him. Size and length. He's not that big. Let me go ahead and check up his size. He is around 6 foot, 280 pounds around there. I was looking at ESPN, but it's not is not as good as you want to see it, obviously. And when you think about that, people are going to compare him to like Aaron Donald, who is a smaller defensive tackle. And I'm not saying you have to be 6'2", 6'3" to be a good defensive tackle. I'm not saying that, but that definitely is an area of concern because he can be moved easily. Is on my second thing. If the linemen get their hands on him, he can be moved easily and be a non-factor on a play, and I think that's a little worrisome. So let's go ahead and that's my number 5 in Kalijah Kancey. Let's go ahead and talk about my number 4 player. Keanu Benton is my number 4 interior offensive lineman, and I'm a big fan, and I think I'm higher on him than a lot of other people. I think he's in my top 50, but he's my number 4 defensive tackle here. Let me read off his stats: 4.5 sacks and 20 solo tackles. Pretty solid for him. The strength is his run defense. I think he is very good stuffing and stopping in the run and not letting running backs get out of his grasp. And then, moving on the pass rush upside, 4.5 sacks. He's not, the numbers don't say it, but he can get off the line and go get that quarterback. And I think there's a lot more upside to that, and that's why I put him on strengths. I think he can be very versatile when it comes to his run defense, but also his pass rush. And I think that's what I love about him most. And he also has very raw power. He can push guys back, when given leverage, and can definitely go in, get the running back, get the quarterback, and that's why I love him. Weaknesses: quickness off the line. I'd like to see him be a little bit more quick off the line, and I think that's where that pass rush upside comes from. And that's one of the biggest things I would want to see a little bit more, is that if he can get off the line quickly, he can be absolutely dominant in the NFL. I can't wait to see him in the NFL, and I think he could be a very, very good player in the league when given the opportunity. Let's go ahead and go into my number 3 player. My third interior defensive lineman is Adetomiwa Adebawore. I'm still trying to learn his name. I'll get it down eventually. And he's considered an edge. He's considered a defensive lineman. He is kind of a tweener, but I do have him as an interior defensive lineman, a defensive tackle in this rankings. But I think, we'll start off with his strengths. Versatile. He's very, very versatile. He can play interior. He can play on the edge. And I absolutely love that from him. And then he can find natural leverage. He can definitely go ahead and get under offensive linemen and get the leverage and get past them and get to the running back or quarterback. And that's what I definitely love about him. I didn't read off his stats, but he had 5 sacks, which is obviously really good. 2 forced fumbles, so he can definitely get the ball out and create turnovers, and 27 solo tackles. So he's not gonna miss too many tackles, I don't think. But the weakness is he lacks athleticism. I think that's the biggest thing why I have him now interior lineman, because that athleticism isn't there for him to be a pure edge rusher. And I think in general that obviously hurts, but I don't see why people can necessarily consider him an edge. He can play edge at times, but I think he's more of a defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman, and I think that's probably where he'll play mainly in the league. So we'll see. But again, lacks athleticism is like one of the reasons why I do mainly see him as an interior defensive lineman, defensive tackle. So that's where I have him with Adebawore. So let's go ahead and go into number 2. Brian Brzee is my number 2 interior defensive lineman in this year's draft. Let me read off his stats: 3.5 sacks and 9 solo tackles. But I don't believe he played. He didn't play in every single game, so there's a little bit there and there. But let's talk about his strengths. I think he's very, very powerful, and that shows on tape. He can definitely push guys back pretty well, and he's athletic. The combo is very good. It's cool, and then that's part of the quickness. He can get off the line quick. He can get around the edge quick, or if he can play edge, which he somewhat can, but get around these interior offensive linemen quickly. So that's what I definitely love about Brian Brzee is again, strong power. He's a pretty athletic dude, and the quickness to get past these interior offensive linemen, and sometimes he did play edge, I believe. So that's what I like. Now the weaknesses, starting with the reasons why I think weaknesses playing wise is the stiffness. I think he's quick, athleticism, but he can be kind of stiff. It's kind of in and out with that, but that's where I see him with playing weaknesses. But obviously the 2022 production and the injuries are definitely a big talking point. Now, obviously, when you can talk about the 2022 season production, there's a lot more things you got to consider. Injuries, his family. So there's a reason why that production wasn't as big and wasn't as good. So obviously you got to take that into account. And he didn't look as good this year, obviously, for the reasons I just mentioned, injuries. And it's interesting to kind of see the top 3 Clemson defensive players that will be probably taken in this draft: Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy, and Trenton Simpson, who all 3 of them didn't have a good 2022 season. It's interesting to kind of see that and kind of correlate that, because it's not like one of them had a pretty bad season, and you also got to take that into advantage. But those 3 guys had a heck of a 2021 season, and so I always like to take that into consideration, because sometimes you're just inconsistent one year. And obviously, he has very, very, very valid reasons to be just not good. I guess it wasn't that he wasn't bad, but inconsistent, I guess, is the best word. So Brian Brzee, I like him. He should go in the first round, in my opinion. So that's who I have there. Let's talk about the number 1 player, in my opinion, interior defensive lineman, Jalen Carter. I don't think anybody can really dismiss that. I don't think anybody was thinking anything different. He's absolutely insane. Let's read the stats really quick. 16 solo tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. The production wasn't as good as you see in my weaknesses, but talking about the strength, he has very raw power. He's, I believe, still very young. I don't know his age necessarily, but I can look that up. Jalen Carter. His age, he is, if it comes up, he's 22 years old, so that is normal. Raw power, that can definitely get better. Power and quickness combo, they get past those interior offensive linemen, and sometimes offensive tackles, because he will line up in between that offensive tackle and that offensive guard. It's really interesting to see that. It's a treat watching his tape, because he is very, very good. And in body control, for how big of a human being he is very well body control, and I think that's really good. Now, looking at the weaknesses, obviously you got to see those legal problems. Those legal problems are obviously serious, because 2 people have passed away in that tragedy. I'm not saying he necessarily caused it, but he was around that area, and he may have had something to do with it. It was bad. Obviously, he's been charged. I think that's it. I don't know if anything else could happen. I don't know too much about the legal situation of what, if anything, could happen. I believe he had to pay a hefty fine and do some community service, which, again, I don't know if that's the end. I don't know if there could be any added charges to that. I'm not going to say that, because I have no idea. I'm not going to put words out there, because obviously I have no idea. And the 2022 production wasn't as good, but I don't think, again, when you look at Brian Brzee, wouldn't take that too much into consideration when you see what he can do. So Jalen Carter is my number 1 interior defensive lineman in this year's draft, defensive tackle. Can anybody blame me? I think everybody has the same thing, but could he fall to the first round or fall to top 10? Possibly. I don't see it, because he is so good. He's probably talent-wise the best player in this draft, or at least defensive player in this draft. I think I have Bijan as my number 1 ranked player. So, an absolutely freak of an animal. Coming out of Georgia, that's always a plus. When you see Jordan Davis go, and you see all these other guys go from Georgia, oh man, Jalen Carter's a beast, and hopefully he stays out of trouble from here on out. And yeah, So that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Subscribe.